This is the Troll Patrol, live with JustinFREAKIN.
Welcome to the Troll Patrol Live. You want to see something scary? Check Justin out in natural light. Ah ha ha! Good afternoon. Welcome. I forgot to mention this last night. I knew it was happening, but had forgotten about it. The Texas death row inmate, Robert Robertson, who almost was executed. Was it Tuesday? Wednesday night? No, it was Thursday night. It's been a long week. I'm sorry. Barely had his life spared by some legal wrangling by the state house in Texas. The state house invited him to testify today in order to try to spare his life on Thursday. Texas, of course, tried to move forward with that execution, but were finally denied the ability. The Texas State Supreme Court put the kibosh on the execution, and this testimony is going to move forward. Now, apparently, they're still going to try to execute the man here in a couple more months. But we're going to see what happens today during the testimony. I think is happening at the bottom of the hour, but it might be the top of the hour. They are in the hearing chamber, ready to go. I'm looking at it right now. So we might find out what that news be doing for a little bit. Maybe watch this State Department briefing with Anthony Blinken. I've long thought about doing the Troll Patrol, a version of the Troll Patrol during the day, where we just watch press conferences and, you know, the White House press briefing and shit like that. Maybe one day. Thought about calling it Troll Patrol Today, TYP, or TPT. I am not a daywalker, Soup. This is my morning coffee. This is my first cup of morning coffee. I am not a daywalker, but sometimes things like this will get me out of bed early enough. Remember, kids. I didn't reset my drops last night. But that's always good advice, right? So this is the Texas State House and the Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence. They're making their way in. I kind of thought testimony was going to start at the bottom of the hour, but now that I think about it, it's probably 1 o'clock Texas time, which will be at the top of the hour. Monday is too early. I mean, usually I would be working at this time. Usually I wouldn't still be in bed and just got up and had coffee. Usually I would have already had my coffee and my morning bowl. Those would have already happened, usually. However, Sky Comic, good evening. Yeah, we watched a good portion of it last night. It didn't make everybody suffer through like all 30 minutes. I think we watched about 7 minutes of it. It was quite amusing. And of course I showed everybody about how it was staged, and those were all Trump supporters, and the McDonald's was closed all day. And I don't want, by the way, when I do things like that, when you guys bring things up in the chat, I'm like, yeah, we covered that. You know I'm doing like a FOMO thing, right? Like it's a broadcaster thing. Yeah, we covered that last night on the show. Yeah, you don't want to miss that. I'm creating a fear of missing out. You need to tune in for the Troll Patrol when the Troll Patrol is on. It's a little marketing technique. Oh, absolutely obvious he never worked. Oh my God, that's the most Texas-looking man I've ever seen in my life. This dude with the black cowboy hat that walked, like that is the most Texas-looking gentleman I have ever seen. You were to look Texas. Oh, there is no missing any chance. All you gotta do is come by and pick me up. Or fly me over that way one of these days. I just can't get over the dude with his black Stetson hat back there. He's probably some kind of law enforcement. Maybe even a marshal, possibly a Texas Ranger. I like that the cameraman has fallen asleep in front of the dais. I was, please travel to the U.S. I'm moving to the big city now. Come see me. That's what. Who was trying to give me shit last night in the chat? I was describing the burger I got at this restaurant. They were like, "Is that a red?" I was like, "It's arugula and goat cheese." No, it was in a big city, in a hipster area. Wasn't a redneck burger. Charlotte, North Carolina. Woo! I haven't looked it up. I don't think it's in the top 20 markets in television, but I think it's top 50. If I had to guess, I'd say it's around like 30, 35. As if you guys know what that means. I will tell you that South Carolina, which I drove through on Saturday, is not beautiful. I even commented about how fucking ugly it was and how everything that they had built made it even uglier. South Carolina is so ugly. Well, I was arguing with Curiouser that we had already missed the best time for the fall foliage and that it was like last week. And she's like, no, it hasn't happened yet. They're just starting turning. And when we got up into the mountains, okay, yeah, they had turned and they were really nice. Because I felt, once again, I don't go out of the house, so how would I even know, right? So I'm like, no, they've already turned. We've already missed all the prettiness. And she's like, no, they haven't. They're just starting to turn. And I felt like she wanted to slap me. Let me get us a run, because I thought this would begin at the bottom of the hour. It is apparently not. So I'm going to put it over here on my other screen so I can see what's going on if something happens. A bunch of people just walked in, but still, I don't see them starting things until like the top of the hour. I don't know. Maybe everybody's walking in now. Maybe I cut away too fast. We've got a bunch of activities. North Carolina, I mean, when we were in the mountains, because you go over a mountain to get into North Carolina from here. And, like, you can see, it is gorgeous. And there's an overlook there and everything. You can see probably almost into Georgia. Like, it's fucking insane. And it is very pretty. This is the Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence in the Texas State House. We're getting ready to have Robert Roberson testify momentarily. I should snap. I'm not a big fan of taking photos of things, right? One of those live in the moment, put your phone down kind of people. Let's get this to kind of give you a rundown of what we are doing here. If you are not familiar with the story, Robert Roberson was convicted in 2002, I believe, in the death of his daughter. He is almost certainly innocent. They convicted him of for what they call shaken baby syndrome, which has since been scientifically debunked. It is called junk science now. The cops pursued him I think they are gabbling in now. I was going to try to give you the rundown, give you a good 4-minute rundown here of what's going on. I think they are gabbling into the session. Real quick.
Roberson is expected to testify in person today at the state capitol.
The convicted killer is accused of killing his 2-year-old daughter, Nikki, in 2002. His execution was delayed last week after a rare move from Texas Supreme Court. KPRC2 investigator Robert Arnold is heading to Austin and joining us live to talk about this hearing. Hey, good morning, Robert.
Hi, good morning. How are you all this morning?
Good. So, just give us a little bit of an update, a little bit of background, how we got
Not high enough for this shit.
So what we're heading to is going to be a hearing before the House Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence. The legislators on this committee have been investigating whether Texas's law, Texas's junk science law, is working as intended, and they're looking at this case to make that determination. Let me explain a little bit.
Yeah.
Texas back.
Gonna have to cut them off. We're gonna go back to the Texas State House where we're getting started.
Posting of public comments for each item on today's agenda. The public comments submitted through the portal will be posted on the Electronic Legislative Information Systems, TLIS and TLO, as well as on the House website. At the conclusion of today's hearing, directions of how to submit public comments on the portal can be found on the meeting notice for this hearing. Today, the committee will hear from invited witnesses only. If you have not filled
Good afternoon, Dame.
the form already, please notify the clerk and we will remedy that problem. Due to capacity constraints in this hearing room, we have 2 overflow rooms set up for anyone present and wanting to watch the live stream of today's proceedings. Those rooms are E1014 and E1026. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for being here. I apologize for the delay. As anyone who has been following this matter, there is an enormous amount of litigation around this.
Clearly.
There's an enormous amount of conversation around this topic. And so many of us have been working through that. Did not mean to keep you waiting, and so please accept my apology for that. Today we have an impressive slate of witnesses who I think will surprise everyone and add important dimension to these issues. The most important witness, of course, is Robert Roberson. I'm very disappointed to say I don't believe that will happen today, and I'd like to go over why that is.
Oh, no.
As many are well aware, there's been a flurry of litigation in the Texas Supreme Court over the weekend. The upshot of that is that a valid legal subpoena for Robert remains in effect. If this committee wanted to take a heavy-handed approach, there are dramatic ways that we could enforce that subpoena. But we didn't issue the subpoena to create a constitutional crisis,
Send the sergeant at arms and get him.
escalating a division between branches of government. In fact, we have the greatest respect for every other facet of our government. And we want all of them to come together in our purpose here, which is making sure that Robert is heard. There's been a lot of discussion about video conferencing Robert in today. I believe that that'd be perfectly reasonable.
So the Department of Corrections shut them down.
But Robert is a person with autism who has significant communication challenges, which was a core issue that impacted him at every stage of our justice system. He's also spent most of the last 2 decades alone, locked away from the modern technology we now take for granted. Video conference is poorly suited for Robert specifically to provide his testimony and would only further the harm he's already suffered. When I thought about the accommodations to be made, I considered his needs as a person with a disability above all other things. I also weighed the fact-finding needs of this committee, the entire purpose of the subpoena. Weighing those with the concerns that were outlined by the Attorney General, our committee simply cannot agree to video conference. That doesn't mean Robert won't testify at all. In the spirit of cooperation, we are in talks with the Attorney General's office right now about ways their position can be addressed while allowing our committee to hear Robert in person. I expect a quick resolution to these discussions, which are ongoing even at this moment. and I will update everyone as soon as those plans are finalized. At this time, I'd like
This
to
is
invite
insane.
the member of the committee to make any opening remarks. Mr. Vice Chair. Chairman Leach.
Thank you, Chairman Moody, and thanks to those of you who are joining us here at the Capitol today, and to my fellow committee members, fellow legislators here in the room, to Texans who are watching on television, and welcome to all of the non-Texans who are tuned in across this country and really all over the world.
Oh, fuck you, slick hair.
We are honored to sit in front of you today, and unlike Washington, to show you that government can work, and that Republicans and Democrats can work together, that death penalty,
You're going to show us government can work by showing the dysfunction in your state government.
that the branches of government, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches can work together. When it comes to our fundamental duties,
You couldn't even bring a motherfucker who is a ward of the state
very simple.
to the state capitol. You guys are in possession of the dude's
The fundamental
fucking life.
People, most
You couldn't even
which is the
transport him to the state capitol, eh?
comes to the life of a potentially innocent Texan, someone who I have, over the past several weeks, grown from having questions and concerns about to believing he is fully innocent, and was within 20 minutes and 20 steps of being executed by the state of Texas just days ago. If we can't speak up and
Apparently he was strapped to the fucking gurney.
fix a system that is not broken in and of itself, but that needs fix, that has failed Robert and failed Nikki, then what are we even doing? Today, this hearing, the purpose of this hearing, our purpose for coming together and issuing a subpoena to Mr. Roberson and to convening last week and today and in what is likely a subsequent hearing is to ask questions and to find the truth. To figure out where the system went wrong, where it failed Nikki, where it failed Mr. Robertson, and to try to fix it. Not only in his case, but to make sure that it never happens again. In closing, I'd like to make very clear, members and Mr. Chairman, remind ourselves that when we take our oath of office, we solemnly swear that we will faithfully execute the duties of our office of state representative of our state, the state of Texas, and will, to the best of our ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of the state of Texas. That oath of office I take seriously. I know each of you take seriously. And importantly, that oath of office is the same oath that judicial officers and executive officers take. And the legislative branch today is taking our oath seriously. And I'm honored to be here with our fellow members, and I welcome all the people tuned in to the Texas House of Representatives. Thanks for joining us today.
Chairman Darby.
I feel gypped.
First of all, thanks to the members of the committee for being here today.
Raven, welcome in. Battle Opossum.
Fellow members of the
Jinkies, my friend, my best friend that,
I want to build
my bestest friend that I haven't seen in years.
about our role here today.
The closest friend that I haven't got to see
Member on the dais this morning.
in the longest time. I miss you, brother.
Been here
Shout
for
out.
a few sessions, and I want to focus the committee and the Texas House on our role and responsibility under our Constitution. Our job is to pass laws, and we do so because we listen to the folks who elected us to come down here and make those decisions, to do the hard work, to focus on an issue, come up with the right policy, and then hopefully we'll pass that policy and it'll make a difference in people's lives. Over the years, certainly during my time here in the legislature, there was a flaw in the system. There was a flaw in the habeas corpus process. There was not a mechanism by which people could appeal to the court to grant relief in a situation where science has changed. Now, they refer to it as junk science, but I would say it's just science has changed. The knowledge has changed. And so we saw problems. So in 2013, and I think Chair Moody and Chair Leach were members of this committee at the time under Senate Bill 344, this legislature took up this issue. we said, let's create some basis of understanding that would allow relief for people who've been charged and are serving time to address the concern about changing knowledge of science. We did that. We set up steps that the Court of Criminal Appeals could look at.
Only one single flaw.
2 years later, in 2015, we revisited the issue and we changed it again. We changed the steps. And so what I would like this committee to focus in on, I'm not here to determine guilt or innocence. That's not my job.
He's innocent.
What I'm here to do is, has the legislature failed in properly addressing the tenets by which the Court of Appeals can review these cases? Since the implementation of this law in 2013, there have been 74
So if you're just joining us, a bombshell
based upon
at the beginning of this committee hearing in the Texas State House.
Those cases were people on death row.
Apparently the executive branch,
Been
which administers the prison system in Texas, that would be Abbott's office,
The other approximately,
more than likely Ken Paxton, the Attorney General,
well, about half of those
blocked the ability of Robert Roberson
that science has.
to testify in person
So we're going to change we're allowed
at the Texas State
to
House.
support a rehearing or retrial on
The
that.
committee apparently had concerns about
All
doing it over video because of Roberson's
primarily to DNA analysis. We all
autism diagnosis.
with DNA, and we understand that science, and so we recognize that has the ability to determine that the accused didn't do it, but somebody else did. But there's no cases that have been successfully appealed that take a look at the tenets for the shaken baby syndrome that we're dealing with today. Clearly, that body of evidence has changed. And so it's up to this legislative committee to look at the tenets of what's going on here. Has the Court of Appeals taken a position that is inconsistent with the statutory language that we have set out for them?
Once again, if you don't have all the details, the baby died of pneumonia.
Well, yes, it's
The
changed.
doctors
but it
gave
does
them
not
the wrong medicine.
guilt or innocence. That's a level beyond which I originally envisioned in 2000.
Roberson sought care.
That's a higher level. Is that a level this committee and the legislature wants the Court of Appeals to review these cases?
Roberson did not kill his child.
Determine the innocence of the accused? I think not. And in this case, I think so we need to be looking, what I'm looking for with the witnesses is how are we as policymakers
Yeah, I don't know what the...
statute that says this is the criteria by
He was talking about his
for
limitations
review
with technology, and also that he'd been behind bars for 20
a
years,
new trial.
and that he didn't feel that it was...
That's what our
Because once again, we're talking about the cops.
not determine guilt or innocence. It's not to
The cops pursued charges against him. The prosecution pursued charges against him because they didn't feel he reacted
statute
with enough emotion to his child dying, but he's autistic.
following those.
So I guess they're not wanting something to not read
We were intending them to.
over a screen or something. I don't know exactly what the concerns are.
It's not about guilt or innocence. Guilt or innocence will be a byproduct.
It seems that the legislature wanted him to testify in person. It seems that the Department of Corrections in Texas wanted to
Thank you, Chair.
set up a video
I want to
conference.
start off by thanking everybody who's taken the time to tune in or come to this incredibly important hearing today. And I also want to start off by thanking
Well, it's not as important if you don't have Roberson there.
the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee for voting on a bipartisan and unanimous basis for the issuance of what was admittedly a historic and wholly unprecedented.
Orb, good evening. Good afternoon.
Grateful for each one of you for taking such a bold action. That even though it was historic and without precedent, I firmly believe it was absolutely necessary, given the extenuating circumstances.
Spending 20 years in prison is
And
gonna
we're
fuck
getting
you
too
up. You're
philosophical.
not gonna have the same social skills you once
In our
had.
country and in our state, in the great state of Texas, it is the people
And autism on top of
who write
that.
the laws that govern them. And they do that via their elected representatives.
Is this guy's name Retta Dowers?
So it is incumbent upon us to make sure that the
Raven, I spent a day one time and it fucked me up.
faithfully adhered to.
I can't imagine what
to them and
multiple days, months, years
concerns or have
would be like.
about separation of powers. I want to be unequivocally clear. If you care about the maintenance of the proper functioning of our constitutional system of separation of powers, you should be the loudest supporters and the biggest proponents of what this committee is doing here today. If the House of Representatives cannot exercise legislative oversight to make sure that our laws are not just being faithfully adhered to, but that they are not potentially being so egregiously violated that it may result in the life of a potentially innocent person being taken by the government, then I would posit there may be no matter that could be subject to legitimate legislative oversight. The role of government, ladies and gentlemen, is the protection of life and the protection of
Oh yeah, this
liberty,
pro-life state
freedoms
Texas.
which do not come from the government, but that are endowed, as our founders knew and codified in our founding documents, in an inalienable fashion, endowed to us by our Creator. And it's the central role of government to protect.
Holiday, good afternoon, and also I'm sorry.
Weighing something before us as constitutional officers of the state of Texas, where a man's life literally hangs in the balance, and we are contemplating the government exercising the ultimate and most awesome power that we give a government, and that is
Diggy,
we cannot get this.
welcome in.
And I say that as somebody, ladies and gentlemen, I want the state of Texas to lead the nation in just about everything.
I'm JustinFREAKIN.
Potentially innocent people is not one.
This is the Troll Patrol Live. We're usually on Sunday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
I think I can confidently say this for my colleagues on the
The
diet.
special report.
I do
We
not.
were supposed to have death row inmate Robert Roberson, who is almost certainly innocent,
They had their lives deprived from them.
almost executed by Texas on Thursday. He was supposed to testify
Not
today,
just my colleagues on this committee,
but we have a
member of the Texas House of
dick
Representatives,
measuring contest in Texas between the executive branch and the legislative branch
and is making the conscious
that has
decision
prevented Roberson from testifying today.
partisanship and put aside the issues that usually divide us so that we can come together in
So
the
this is the start of the hearing,
future.
where we are not going to get testimony from Roberson,
Here, members
unfortunately.
have opening remarks. Yes, Representative.
Welcome in, Raiders.
Thank you, Mr.
This
Chair.
is live. Roberson was convicted in 2002 of killing his baby.
To say thank you to all the members.
Supposed shaken baby syndrome, which has since been debunked.
That was made.
He's an autistic man that the cops pursued because he didn't react with enough emotion to his daughter's death.
That knew that each of us in this room would be here today.
He's been scheduled to die multiple times.
And for this time. And so I just want to say thank you all for being here.
The Supreme Court has refused to intervene.
It is historic that
His life was saved because this committee subpoenaed him to testify.
hopefully will bring.
He was strapped to the gurney on Thursday within minutes of
Any other members? Okay.
facing certain death.
Nope.
And the Texas Supreme Court for once did the right thing.
I'm going to just let you know who the witnesses
So
are.
hopefully that catches everybody up. Welcome in. Do give the channel a follow if you're not already following. Joining us for the live show. Find out the most absurd news, politics, and current events of the day.
But I'll go through that list now.
I think we're doing a congressional debate tonight.
Philip McGraw, John Grisham,
The author?
Elsa Alcala, Terry Compton,
Oh, and you might be wondering about my political stance.
Kate.
And since this is Texas, I would like to point out that I have a grudge, real axe to grind with Texas Representative Dan Crenshaw. I would give anything in the world, everything I own, to piss in that man's open eye hole.
At this time, the chair calls.
Give me that eye pussy, Congressman. So if being a leftist gets me to pissing in Dan Crenshaw's eye pussy, I will be a leftist. If I thought libertarians would hold Dan Crenshaw down and let me let me take a leak in his eye pussy, I would be a libertarian. I'm malleable. Yes, definitely surprised they didn't just let him die. This is Dr. Phil looking motherfucker. Oh, that might actually be Dr. Phil, actually. Come to think of it. I was like, this is Dr. Phil looking motherfucker. It probably actually is Dr. Phil, because he's been vocal about this case.
Doctor, we don't probably have the same audio capabilities that you're accustomed to. No disrespect to the House administration, but these microphones are directional, and so
well, at least he's on the right side on this
sure
one.
that we're able to hear you. Before I do turn it over to you for your
usually he's stirring the pot for personal gain.
I have you registered as a witness as Philip McGraw, PhD. You are here testifying on behalf of yourself, and you are testifying neutrally on the topic being considered today. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, sir. I appreciate you taking the time to be here, and I don't want to.
Remember that time the dude from Bum Fights?
Go ahead and turn it over to you.
Punked him out. That was great.
Members up here may have some questions following up after your testimony, but we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
Who banned Bagheera?
It's an honor, a privilege, and a responsibility to be here and address this committee and this important topic. And I'm here today to speak about my experience with Robert Robeson and learning about his case. And I want to talk about what I've done to be able to speak about this. I've reviewed the transcripts and supporting documents from his trial. I've done an intensive forensic interview with him, and I think I am in a position to do that because a lot of my career, decades, have been spent in the legal arena, both civil and criminal. And in terms of my training, so people know, I do have extensive training in clinical psychology and behavioral medicine or medical psychology from the great University of North Texas in their PhD program. And then I completed a postdoctoral fellowship in forensic psychology. And spent a lot of time working in the litigation arena for a big part of my professional career. And not to bury the lead, I am 100% convinced that we're facing a miscarriage of justice here. I say that because I do not believe that Mr. Roberson has had due process in this case. I do not believe he has yet enjoyed a fair trial in this matter, and I'll talk about that in detail. I believe that in the United States of America, if we are going to deprive someone of their liberty, that comes at a very high standard. If we are going to deprive someone of their life, that comes at a very high standard. A very high standard of proof, a very high standard of evidence, and when you say beyond a reasonable doubt, that's said so much that I think sometimes it can lose its meaning, and we have to really stop and think what that means. That means that if you have 12 people on a jury, that means that there should be nothing that 12 people can go in a room and reasonably disagree about. And that is a high standard, that there should not be anything that they would go in there and say, well, there's nothing here that we can reasonably disagree about. And I think that when we talk about due process and fair trial, that means that all the evidence
everything that is relevant and pertinent to that trial gets before the trier of fact, whether it be a judge or a jury.
Hate on Dr. Phil all you want, but at least he's bringing attention to this case.
And I certainly don't think that standard has been met here, that high standard by which we would deprive someone of their life,
because unfortunately,
has been met.
There usually has to be some celebrity attached to a cause to get Americans to care.
The death penalty actually hangs in the balance here, because if we get this wrong in a case like this, I think that the death penalty could come under real attack. And there are circumstances where I personally believe that it is appropriate.
See, he's like, we can't execute this innocent guy because then we can't execute all the other people who want to execute.
When he was dragged by King and Brewer in Jasper, Texas, and subsequently Brewer was executed in 2011, and King was executed in 2019. A third man got life in prison. I look at cases like that and think, there are times where the death penalty just seems appropriate.
Oh, shit on him. Shit on Dr. Phil.
And it would be
his head deserves to be shit on the way Dan Crenshaw's high pussy deserves to be pissed in.
I'm also aware, in circumstantial cases, how powerful it is.
I do my best, Mr. Balls.
For an expert, a physician, for example, to come before a jury.
Dr. Phil needs a titty slap.
And I've spent so much time in cases and debriefing jurors after a case, and know how heavily
I think it's bong time for me. I need something stronger.
Those jurors. And I believe in this case that there was what I would refer to as triad tunnel vision, because there was a shaken baby syndrome that was defined by a triad of symptoms. And
light one up, tip one back.
Were subdural hematoma, brain swelling, and retinal hemorrhaging. And that was believed to define the syndrome of shaken baby. And we now know from an evolution of science that that's just simply not the case. That there are a number of other explanations for those syndromes, and that
if it wasn't such a serious topic, I would love to see SNL cover this next week.
And as a result, the Daubert test, junk science, it's just been debunked.
You want to see Mikey Day dress up as Dr. Phil?
That you can look to in defining that. And I think that once that was looked at.
Oh, by the way, somebody asked me who I thought would play Brett Baer on Saturday Night Live when we watched the Harris interview.
There's something in psychology known as confirmation bias.
And I said it would be Bowen Yang. No, apparently they pulled out the big guns. They had Alec Baldwin play Brett Baer, and he did a good job, I got to admit.
For people to make up their mind to something, and they close off openness to alternative explanations. They seek and find and hear
Mikey Day is awesome, Prometheus.
Data that supports their initial belief. And they turn a deaf ear, a deaf ear and a blind eye to anything other than what they passionately believe to be the
Yes, Dr. Phil, it's called confirmation bias.
And I think we have clear evidence that that's what happened in this case. The decision was this triad of symptoms were written down, and it started with the doctors that were looking at this first, and then it trickled down to investigators and police and went right through the trial process, including Mr. Robeson's defense counsel, including his own counsel.
Guard, we're glad to have you here.
I've heard
nothing but love. Did somebody shout Nikki out for me?
Opposing these efforts say that, well, this really wasn't the crux of this case. It wasn't really.
Nothing but love to Nikki. I love it when I'm over there hanging out with her.
But I've studied this trial transcript, and it was the crux of this case. It was
Paranormal orb. Gotta dumb it down for the Texas legislature.
in one summary that I've looked at, as well. I've read a summary and I've read the actual transcript. I stopped counting at 47 times it was mentioned in the trial transcript. Shaken baby syndrome, shaken baby case, shaken baby syndrome, shaken baby case, triad of symptoms. And let me tell you something that will seem incredibly obvious, but it is not. Juries decide these things on what they see and hear, not on what they don't see and hear.
Yep.
And you would think, well, yeah. But my point is, I've often seen lawyers try to get something into the record and it's kept out, and heard them say, well, we didn't get that in, but the jury knows we had something really powerful, and that's going to stick with them. No, it's not. They decide on what they see and hear, not what they don't see and hear. And there was a massive...
That's absurd. What lawyer told you that? They're a stupid lawyer.
That was never reviewed. It was never put in front of the jury. It was never heard. And you always hear, and the law is clear, that the burden of proof is on the prosecution. That Mr. Robeson does not have to prove that he didn't do this. The prosecution has to prove that he did. And that's great in theory. But
if you don't have a good defense.
Decades in the litigation arena, I can tell you, debriefing juror after juror after juror after juror across decades, they have taught me that they sit back and say, if we're not down here for the reason that the prosecution says we are, somebody needs to explain to me an alternative explanation. Because we know these cases get resolved 100 different ways before we ever get to this point. So if we're not down here for the reasons that they say we are, somebody needs to explain.
There has to be an alternate theory. You can't just
for an alternative explanation. And
or you can poke holes in the prosecution's case.
Oh my gosh, was there an alternative explanation? This child was an ill...
Take the OJ case. OJ didn't provide an alternative explanation. Just poked enough holes.
Record show.
Well, I guess technically their alternate explanation was that he was framed by the cops. Not bad.
Shows.
I guess that was their alternate explanation.
Had 46 doctor or...
But that doesn't explain who killed Ron and Nicole.
23 months and few weeks of life. In the days leading up to her death, the record shows she had 104 point.
Well, for those of you still questioning, like Dr. Phil, he's based out of Texas.
The record shows that Robert took her to the doctor twice in the week.
Like he does a show out of Houston, I think.
The record shows that she was prescribed Finnegan on 2 separate days leading up to her death. A black box warning says you do not prescribe this medication to someone under 2 years of age. On the second administration, it was Finnegan with codeine.
Yeah, to a 2-year-old.
Impact.
With pneumonia.
Suppresses the respiratory system. We did.
Yeah, she was misdiagnosed.
That this child had severe pneumonia. We did not hear that. And
the jury didn't hear that? Oh, fuck.
To be looked at, and the medical examiner admitted that they were not looked at. And I will provide to the committee, this is a calendar of the 2 years of this child's life, and every red notation is a doctor or hospital visit during her young life. This was a child that was acutely and chronically ill. And when I say that this child had been diagnosed with interstitial...
I think it's just a sticker, isn't it, Prometheus?
On the left is a scan of her lungs, and
Oh, you're just being facetious. I'm sorry.
is non-functional lung tissue.
Tone and text, remember.
I'm telling you just what the report says. I'm not playing physician here.
I should automatically assume
Is a normal lung.
whatever you said was at least with a hint of sarcasm, if not full-on cynicism.
Why? Because it was never looked at. It was never looked at. The medical examiner did not review this and said so. This child had collapsed several times when Robert Roberson was not in this child's life. This wasn't the first time this child collapsed.
I'm not high enough for Prometheus.
And turned blue and had respiratory shutdown. It had happened a number of times when he wasn't around. On this occasion, he was around and took the child to the hospital. So how was this case tried without all of this stuff being put into the record?
Yeah, Dr. Phil.
It's astounding. It's astounding.
I agree with Dr. Phil. Mark this down in the books, in the annals.
Stipulated that this was a shaken baby case. During board,
Because I believe when we send Oprah to the boards,
every one of you related.
we've also got to make her apologize
Shaken baby.
for all the horrible people that she
Basically, a lack of control of emotion.
unleashed on the world.
But it's not something that rises to the level of capital murder. His own counsel says this was a shaken baby case.
Yeah, she got to apologize for Oz. She got to apologize for Dr. Phil. She got to apologize for the Million Little Fibers dude. She got to. There's a bunch.
Did suffer injuries that are totally consistent with those applied by rotational forces, more commonly known as shaken baby syndrome.
The secret dude, yes, Dougie.
Now, Robert Roberson was offered.
I don't know that one, but sure. If Oprah unleashed them on the world, she needs to apologize for it.
Because he said, I never did anything to this child. I never put my hands on this child in anger. I didn't hurt this child. I didn't do anything to this child. I'm not going to take a plea deal for something I didn't do. But yet his counsel stands up and says,
I love how everyone comes in. Why is Dr. Phil here?
shaken baby syndrome. On page 35 of the closing argument, defense
A123, I don't call you Soup.
opening and
You don't get the name Soup.
that there is responsibility in this case. Yes, this is a shaken baby case, but no, this is not a murder case.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it, Soup.
Counsel is.
Didn't she also have something to do with Jilly Juice?
Baby. And the science has marched on and now rebutted that shaken baby syndrome is a valid medical.
He said butted.
Syndrome. Has said you cannot rely on that. That is just.
That's what happens to tops. They get butted.
Evolved to a level that says we know that shaken baby, as defined then, does not create that triad of symptoms, and that triad of symptoms can be created by a number of other things, such as over medication, pneumonia.
Let's just carve Trump into the moon.
List here of what happened in this case.
That's probably what he wanted a Space Force for.
It has been reported that there was an expert psychologist that supposedly recommended to Robert, just take a plea deal, go to prison, and you can kill yourself once you're there.
What?
Now, I can't verify that. I can just tell you it's in the record and has been reported. But yet he refused those plea deals. And went to trial, where the jury was wrongly told that only abuse could explain the death, and they heard nothing about this child's acute or chronic illness. Now, there's another factor that comes into play here.
He is a doctor.
The jury was told that Mr. Robeson was guilty because he didn't respond.
And I think I had to look it up a few years ago to find out if he was still active, and he is.
When he brought the child in. Flat.
I figured he had just let his license expire or whatever.
They were not.
But he had not.
That
he apparently still has a practice, as of whenever I looked it up.
And
I don't even want to say it's psychologist. What's the step under psychologist?
To light until 2018.
Like a therapist or some shit.
Many years later, when he had an active counsel.
Well, Dr. Phil's been known to be wrong as fuck, Lucky.
Examined and formally diagnosed. We see all through this man's life, which was not a spotless life, let me tell you. He got involved.
Hold on, let me look it up.
Burgled a house at one point, violated his probation, but never is there any evidence of him.
Oh no, he did seize his license in 2006. I must have mixed up with somebody else. Maybe it was Dr. Oz I looked at. Probably it was Dr. Oz I looked up.
Rage.
So yeah, he ceased renewing his license in 2006.
There is testimony.
And he was a clinical psychologist.
Because he was different and lacked social skills that are typically associated with autism, or frequently associated with autism, but he never retaliated. I sat across from Mr. Robeson at the Polunsky unit, and I've spent a lot of my professional career studying and practicing deception detection and interrogation. I've worked with law enforcement locally, federally.
Did my stream go down? I don't have Twitch open.
Developing these skills and techniques. So I didn't just go have a therapy session with him.
I'm sorry, Torji.
Go talk to him.
I was Lord.
Mindful of deceptive behaviors, and
hey, Mr. Elwood was in here. I didn't see you do the lurker love.
People talk about that like there are lie behaviors.
I missed out on it.
But there are behaviors that correlate with lying. There are behaviors that show up when someone is goes into a stress mode that is associated with not telling the truth and creating something that is misdirection, trying to take you away from something they don't want you to know about them. I ask him hard questions. I ask him point blank, straight up, looking him square in the eye, did you harm this child? Did you shake this baby? Did you put your hands on this child in anger?
You asked him straight up. He looked him in the eye.
Did you fail to get this child?
Mr. Elwood, then I will give you your lurker shout out right now.
He said he had been criticized for putting the child in the car and racing to the hospital instead of calling 911 and waiting for the ambulance. He said he made the judgment call. He could get her there faster. But he was forthcoming and straightforward. You know,
I can't really read. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to butcher it. Hold on.
Together, the pieces.
Stum in the roofie. The roofie.
And I think sometimes
you're our lurker love. Shout out to you. Glad you're here.
The litigation arena. That sometimes we forget that the goal of prosecution is to seek justice, not conviction. I think
fucking beanie tongue. God damn it! Why doesn't anybody ever change the color of my bandana?
Invested in cases that is easy to forget that the goal is to seek justice. And if you get in the middle of a case and you determine, wait a minute, I've got the wrong person here, or I can now see that no crime was committed, that this was a case explained by medicine. This was a case
Ponder monkey
explained by disease. I need to walk away from this one. And when you have a medical examiner that has admitted they never looked at the child's medical records, including the final week where there were multiple doctor visits.
I can't show you, Maynard.
The child's last 2 days, when extraordinary efforts.
I wish I could let you kiss Maynard.
Which meant there were efforts made to
There's no Maynard here.
relieve the pressure in the brain. Yes, there were things done to the child's head. But if you look at the pathology reports, they contradict what was concluded.
This is Maynard hanging out at the new apartment, still being a little upset.
You look at the pathology reports, they say that's not true. There was one minor.
Maynard is totally okay. He's just pissed off right now.
Fell out of bed. All of those things were available. And these things.
You can request to see Maynard, Sock, Smokey, and maybe even other kiddies. Starting on Sunday.
Execute this man. And that's why I say there was not.
What else to change bandana? You want the bandana and the beanie?
There were people that, in my opinion, did not do their job. No one, including me, can say with 100% certainty what happened in that house that morning. My professional opinion.
I took the cats to the new apartment this weekend and like my first load of stuff. So I don't have the cats for the week, and I'm very sad about it. Waking up without them is
examining the record.
Very hard.
The trial transcript in this case, the medical records in this case. This man has not had due process. This man has not had a fair trial. And if we start executing people in Texas absent due process,
I don't time them out, Prometheus. You guys quit being so hard on people.
We are going down a really dangerous road. That is not something that I can support. And I know that has not happened. As I say, it's a very high standard to take someone's life. We must have the courage to make choices that matter at times that count, and it is always the right time to do the right thing. I welcome this.
But here's the thing. You time people out, they might leave.
Doctor, thank you.
I'm trying to win them over as a viewer, and you're being detrimental to me.
Follow-up questions, and then if there are other members.
Don't do that shit.
I'll defer to them as well. I want to
It's my winter bandana.
Robert's autism.
Because if they're here hanging out, we've got a chance to win them over if they're not being abusive.
Between interior life and external expression, how does that present
That's
itself?
what clinically banned Bagheera, and I'm going to have a talk with him about that.
In the criminal justice system.
Bagheera, I don't know what you said. Like the chat had told me you were getting borderline the other day, so kind of watch that. Just don't do anything that's going to get me TOS on Twitch, and you should be good.
And that's why it's referred to as spectrum.
Correct.
Because there is a broad range of how autism.
But I think it was during a debate, wasn't it?
And it can change across time.
And I didn't see what the fuck you were saying.
What we do know is
because you're awesome, Mr. Illwood.
Between
you want a timeout?
Internal experience and external expression and interaction, and you certainly see that with Robert. I think that Robert.
It didn't give me an option
of affect.
I already untimed him out.
I think he is not cognitively.
I was gonna do like what, 10 seconds or something? What, 30 seconds?
And he is emotionally
Princess Kimberly, good afternoon.
not well developed in terms of expressing, showing emotions, or interacting with someone on an
Well,
emotional
anytime I time people out, it is almost always for
experience. 9 out of 10
comedic effect.
might not be on the spectrum. So you're not going to
Oh, I owe somebody a weed
a
hit.
typical response
Yeah, Byronic.
in a crisis situation or a normal situation. And having spent 21 years on death row, which is very confining and absent a lot of the stimulation that people normally get, that's going to worsen and deepen the situation in most cases. And as I say, every situation is different. I can
Supposedly this weed I'm smoking is the good. I think.
his world has constricted, as you would think,
Or I
anyone
might have went back to the
that's confined in that kind of a space.
just the good.
But to his credit, he has distinguished himself. And he is one
He was charging an extra 10 for whatever it was
very few
we got yesterday.
has elevated himself to have some freedom to move about the pod. He has a pretty much spotless record on.
I hate to judge based on looks, but like he looks like he's a nice guy.
And he, as someone that is very convicted in his faith and is a strong believer, and he does have people that come and see him and visit with him. In fact, the investigator that led
Those hands could break rocks.
prosecution efforts at the time comes and sees him on a regular basis, and he's gotten comfortable with him, and
Okay, he looks average.
has completely changed his position, believes he made a mistake
Doesn't look menacing.
in pursuing Robert at the time, has asked his forgiveness, which Robert has graciously extended to him.
You know who's pretty in pink?
The two of them
This
have a pretty comfortable relationship where Robert can speak to him openly, and he was much more comfortable by the time I got through talking to him than he was at the beginning, but still he had very pushed verbalizations. He had a difficult time with eye contact. He had a difficult time relating and responding in what I would call a predictable way that you would expect with someone that was functioning absent the autistic diagnosis.
How long did you sit with him on that occasion?
They give you exactly 60 minutes, and I made sure I got every second from start to finish on a stopwatch.
How far apart were you? What was the physical?
There's
setup?
glass between us. He's on the phone and I'm on the phone, but we're maybe 3 feet between us.
Okay. You've conducted interviews over video
So,
conference.
looking exactly like this.
And I've conducted a number of interviews on death row with the glass between myself and the interviewee many times before.
Is that something that would have been effective in your meeting with Robert, given his condition?
You know, it's kind
I mean, I got stickers with the Troll Patrol, so it's kind of close, right?
room. It's probably 3 feet wide, maybe 5 feet deep, and he sits at a desk much like I'm sitting here. And the glass is kind of at the front edge of this table, and he kind of leans in on the phone. And it's kind of a comfort zone for him. I mean, he doesn't like a whole lot of stimulation, but you know, he leans in and participates. And I ask him a variety of questions about history and what he could remember and not remember.
Well, Torchy, I will tell you that I am currently in the process of switching over to Fourth Wall, and all the stuff is available right now on the Troll store
to test his abstract thinking.
It's a lot better than the last store I used, but I think Fourth Wall is the best of the best.
I challenged him when they said they wanted to go.
I'm hoping to have the Fourth Wall active before the election.
His home, where he found her and brought her in.
Have all sorts of fun stuff for you guys.
Sure, I'll take you right over there. I said, does it strike you odd? And you know, there's, of course, a video record of this, so you can see exactly how that exchange went. But I said, did you feel bad? Your daughter's fighting for her life there, and they say, I want you to get in the car and take me home. Did it occur to you that I don't want to leave. I'm going to stay here with my daughter? And he was like, well, that's what they told me I needed to do, so I took him home. I mean, that's what they told me to do. He was very compliant at the time. I said, did you want to leave? And he said, well, that's what they told me to do. That's what I mean. He's a very compliant individual, and he didn't have the ability to express the emotion, I'm not going to leave my daughter. He just complied and did what he was told.
So
ooh, I do need bandanas. I wonder if Fourth Wall has bandanas.
Someone like Robert's out of his.
I have not had bandanas in any of the stores I've had thus far.
So
why was bandanas in the store? Of course.
Mental agility,
the fuck.
All of those things, I would think.
Why 4.5 fucking years into doing this
and seeing others on a screen, as you and I learned how to do during the pandemic.
And I've just now come up. I didn't even come up with it. Torchy just came up with the idea for bandanas
that he can have to grab onto and relate. You put him two-dimensional, and he doesn't. He needs cues.
Still up. Welcome in. Thank you for being a freaking follower.
And it makes it difficult.
Earned a commission indeed.
He can't have that. And his ability, we have to do everything we can to help him.
Thank you, Torchy.
Assist in his defense. And
the bandana stallion.
22 years ago. The
chat did this to me. This is not my style.
Very good facility to assist in his defense at the time. If he had,
maybe it will be now. Maybe I'll be a trendsetter.
When he was there every day with his lawyer sitting next to him, if he had the ability to say, "Wait a minute, I've told you, I've turned down plea deals. I don't want to do this. Why are you standing up saying this is shaken baby case?" If he had insisted that, look, this medical examiner's not talking about the evidence here. I mean, the cause of death was the child had a bacterial infection, was septicemic, and had a necrotizing infection that was eating lung tissue.
Necrotizing.
If anybody here had been in that situation, we'd be saying, hey, we need to be talking about this. You don't need to be telling them something I've told you I didn't do. We need to be talking about an alternative explanation about why we're here. And he had a difficult time doing that when he was present at trial. If he had been on a screen, the ability to initiate contact when he's not in the room would be nil.
Okay. I have one more question for you, then I want to pass it on.
That was Dr. Phil explaining why he didn't fill the...
Someone was sitting in that other chair next to you.
Video conference.
Testimony would
be to his benefit.
That this was not a shaken baby case. How would you reply to that?
Say that again.
If someone was sitting there next to you and their testimony to us was, this was not a shaken baby case, how would you respond to that?
Well, I agree. It was not a shaken baby.
Yeah, that's what you just said.
That it was a shaken baby case.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out where you're going with it.
Yeah, it didn't make any fucking sense. And I'm high.
Well, first thing I would say is there's no such thing.
Shake and bacon case.
Syndrome. Now, listen, if I'm not asking people to believe that a full-grown adult cannot pick up a 20-pound child and do serious or fatal harm to that child. Of course they can. Of course they can. They can pick that child up and bash its head into a wall.
I think it was the chair of the committee
on the ground or whatever. But
the Texas State House.
To be very clear signs of that having happened that were not present.
This is the Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence.
What is known as shaken baby syndrome depends on this triad of symptoms: subdural hematoma and brain swelling and retinal hemorrhaging that you see in the eyes. That triad of symptoms has been debunked. That's not what happens.
Debunked.
The baby is shaken, and that there are a myriad of other causes, such as over-medication or absence of oxygen to the brain, or septicemia, other things that can cause those symptoms. If there are alternative explanations, then that's no longer a valid syndrome. And there have been a number of exonerations because of this. That was the science at the time. Science evolves, just like DNA technology evolved, and
science bitch is wrong sometimes.
With DNA, the same thing here. There have been a number of shaken baby convictions that have been exonerated because they have come back with new science that says there's an alternative explanation for this. You can't convict someone on something that has now been debunked by the medical community. Even the individual who initially identified shaken baby syndrome said that was not the intent. I did not intend for that to be used as a prosecution for injury to a baby, and it has been debunked and disproven by the medical profession and is not used. So fortunately, science has progressed, medical science has progressed, and there's now new evidence available that should be used.
Well, I appreciate it. I do want to apologize for misspeaking. I was up at 3 a.m.
That's what this is about, DJ Dub, because this law, the way I understand it,
thank you for,
they've never had a case that challenged the shaken baby syndrome thing. It's kind of like the...
what I'm hearing from you very clearly is you've read the...
Kind of like the
review,
qualified immunity that police have, right? There has to be a case
that someone could...
where somebody has won before in order to challenge the law. That's never happened with the shaken baby thing. So they didn't have any kind of precedent to be able to overturn this conviction.
A shaken baby case. That's what they told us last week. No, we didn't try a shaken baby case. Sounds like you reviewed the record.
I can understand how this would be good press for Dr. Phil, and he'd want to jump on this. And once again, he's in Texas, so it's local for him.
Tried to do in that case.
Well, as I said, I stopped counting it 47 times in the record, and I read you quotes from the defense, certainly what the defense attorney tried. That was in voir dire, opening statement and closing argument, quotes from the defense attorney, stipulating this was a shaken baby case, despite Robert's assertions.
And to be completely fair to Dr. Phil, he's a good communicator, and he did a good job communicating the facts of the case. And even brought info that I didn't know about.
I'm not going to take a plea on something.
And I had read like the whole Innocence Project thing on him.
He did do it. His own lawyer said he did do it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But still, fuck, he's doing this for all the wrong reasons. You know it.
Can you tell us a little bit more about CSI?
I
think you've been a little modest so far when you said you've been involved in litigation.
It's a non-controversial, slam dunk fucking case.
As I say, I had kind of three areas of
And not everybody's on it, right? So Dr. Phil has a little niche he can get in on.
Psychology was brain and central nervous system. And then I did a year's postdoctoral fellowship in forensic psychology or psychology in the law. And I was
Well, still, he couldn't have possibly swayed me because I was already on this side before he ever
original CSI. Probably should
gave this testimony. As I said, I read the Innocence Project file on this guy on stream, about 2 weeks ago?
Science firm, and we were retained.
Somebody, DJ Dub was probably here, Torchy was here, and
evaluate.
We've had a number of,
and
I've also gone into this on stream. This is a topic I'm passionate about because I was pro death penalty for the longest time. And when I was in college, I was a philosophy major, and we had Sister Helen Prejean, the woman that Dead Man Walking is based off of, as a speaker. And we actually got to sit down and have like an informal conversation, like in a circle with her and shit. And that's when I changed my position.
Then we had 7 women and 5 men in the gallery that matched them. So if we had a
Dr. Phil is a horrible human being.
And a barking dog that was a Baptist with a year of college. Then we had a woman out here that was 42 years old with a 2.
And I certainly don't let celebrity status sway me on anything.
Baptist.
Being a celebrity is like being a Christian. It probably automatically makes me more suspicious of you.
We mock tried cases.
Oh shit! Sorry, didn't mean to slap my my microphone.
To find out.
Twitch says you're a possible ban evader still. What's going on? You been in here before?
Was likely to view a case and what was important to them and what was not important to them.
I don't mind. You can tell me. It's the Troll Patrol.
Having one jury.
I get onto my chat for my mods for banning people.
Went to independent deliberation rooms, deliberated over the actual jury charge.
What is a gross miscarriage of justice? This case? Absolutely.
And all of that was videotaped and then analyzed.
The fact that Dr. Phil isn't against the wall? Absolutely.
Going to be what was important, what was not important, so we knew what to emphasize and not emphasize. Whether this particular expert was effective or the other expert was more effective, what they wanted to hear. And
you're Twitch persecution. Okay, who were you? Why'd you get banned? Do I need to go unban you?
Effectively and getting the best result we could. And sometimes the answer was, you need to settle.
State your case.
Sure.
Thank you.
Dr. Phil getting choked up. I'm just a man.
We did criminal cases and civil cases, both.
Well, as a former client from a couple decades ago, I've seen you in action, and I can attest to your skill set. And just want to say thank you for being involved in this case. Thank you for being willing to be here today.
Justin.
Busy day now that you're Dr. Phil in a different role than what I knew you as a couple decades ago. But
brother, a couple decades ago, he was still Dr. Phil.
It's not the typical person talking to a few jurors. You've done this for decades, correct?
I have.
Okay. And you said you read the record. Did you see?
Still has already admitted to being
involved in the record.
Banned in my chat under a different account.
Sexual assault early on. It was brought up concerning
Team Who Gordon Ramsay.
In a child, I believe.
See, Gordon Ramsay, that's a celebrity I like.
Early on, and it seemed to me that it was brought up to prejudice the jury, frankly. But then it was dropped out later and was not part of the jury charge. It was not something they were asked to render a finding on. And it was not something they prosecuted on at all. I felt like it was...
Teach him how to use Control F. Seriously, he said he stopped counting in the transcript. He could have just Control F'd it, and it would have told him every single instance.
Into the mix, But then it was completely dropped out. It was not paid off. There was no.
Still, you're speaking in goddamn riddles.
There was nothing.
Just tell us what's going on. What was your screen name? What were you banned for? I'll go unban you.
But then it was never paid off later.
Fair to say, if we were to grab 100 people off the street, that probably all 100 of those people would agree that that would prejudice the jury. That
He seriously is Temu Gordon Ramsay.
Going to deliberation.
Well, it certainly would, and but as I said,
He looks like an idiot sandwich.
In opening statement.
Oh my God! Stop with the riddles.
Just you're just going to say we believe the evidence will show, and then the jury is expected to see, well,
nobody knows the Muffin Man.
Let's see whether they bring it or they don't. And then in
Then disaster fell.
Closing attorney.
What, you tried to troll Justin and you got fucking bitch slapped?
Did they ever show you anything to do that? And with something that inflammatory, there's a real question about whether you even want to bring up that they didn't pay it off, because you're reminding them, and it puts it back into the jurors' minds.
Girl, you thought he was a man, but he was a muffin.
Leave it there. It's a difficult call. But
did you have a nut out?
You will see that there was never one word of testimony from an expert or otherwise to show that there was any even insinuation. And a Dr. Francis Green filled out an affidavit on July 9th of this year, and she basically said in her affidavit that if she was going to render an opinion on what the cause of death was and what she saw, there was certainly no mention of that. She disagreed with the cause of death, and she had a firm opinion.
I mean, half of me wants to just turn off Dr. Phil and fuck with Still Ump now.
Onset of which occurred at least a week to several weeks before her collapse. That there was a.
You want to call in? Do you want to Discord? Do you want to have a conversation? Do you want to air your grievances?
Bacterial bronchopneumonia.
Bronchopneumonia.
To a week before the death. Necrotizing, meaning that it was actually eating tissue in the lungs. And so as a result of bacterial infection, she became septicemic, resulting in all of this coagulation reflected in lab results. And that it was a combination of drugs.
I feel like by everyone's presence in here, there is a market for me to be on earlier in the day, isn't there?
Suppository and cough syrup, and none of this other was.
I've been toying with the idea
anywhere in that.
And I know you're not a medical doctor, and I don't expect that you've memorized everything about this case, but do you recall the cause of death as testified to by the medical examiner?
Bagheera, I don't really have news to get back to. It's not news time.
Reference the triad of symptoms and shaken baby, and I can pull up what she said here.
My understanding, and I've not reviewed the record to the level that you have, but my understanding is that there's a certain designation when it is a shaken baby syndrome case, and it's not. It doesn't.
Well, fair enough. This is kind of news.
Cause of death, and so I didn't know if you had that available.
It would have been more notable if we'd had the death row inmate testifying.
Before I leave.
Okay. And if not, we can come back to it. What about as far as the defense attorney a while ago? You said that you would debate whether or not it was proper to bring the sexual assault back up. And would it also be proper to ask for a mistrial? I mean, based upon inflammatory assertions.
Absolutely. I would think that absent any evidence, any witness, no evidence whatsoever, I would think you could move for a mistrial, but that's certainly not in the record.
And then as far as if in your opinion, is the
I don't understand if there was exculpatory evidence that they left out.
A Court of Criminal Appeals.
Bagheera, he was supposed to be executed on Thursday.
Best case scenario.
Well, I certainly think at a minimum.
And this hearing saved him, even though Texas tried its best to override them. So they have to schedule a new execution, so it'll be like 60 to 90 days.
Have been violated, and or a new trial. Which
DJ Dub, if I came on of an afternoon, I would probably come on at 4:20.
And with the two best pieces of evidence that you know of, would it be the CAT scan of the brain and also the photo that you?
Because in
regard to the child's lungs.
I think that, along with the history of her going into respiratory distress.
I'm thinking about trying it out once I move to the new apartment.
This started
up through election day, so that'd be like 2 weeks.
Listen, if I need to say I work with
for a week and a half
project some and for a number of years, and
because there's going to be rallies, there's going to be press conferences, there's going to be so much shit going on. That I look at. I haven't really talked about it, Lucky.
I've been to death row and interviewed inmates.
I think every time I've talked about it, it hasn't been on the main show. It's been like after the show goes off and I'm just chilling out, getting high.
I can't, in good conscience, say that I can get behind this. If I can't study the record.
We're hoping that there is no interruption to any troll patrol, that I go off, I sign off on Friday, on Thursday.
To justice, I just don't step up to them.
A little smaller. It's going to be a little cramped for a little bit.
Get involved with everyone that's
But I'm going to bigger city, much nicer area. After going there, I'm really stoked about it.
Yes, you can't walk away.
Well, thank you for being here today, and thank you for your testimony.
I didn't realize exactly how close to. She told me I could walk everywhere, and she meant it. I can walk downtown if I wanted to. It was maybe 2 miles total to be downtown.
I want us to try to take a step back together. Because I don't know if you were able to hear some of our opening remarks, but I thought Representative
just the hardest part is that the kiddies are already there, and I don't have them, and that's a real kick in the balls.
To retry this case, we have to be.
I don't have a bike, but I may now, Ponder.
Not to act as some sort of.
Because it was definitely a bike kind of area.
And I hear those concerns. I share those concerns, and we have to be. Members laser focused.
There was like so much cool shit, just like right there.
Makes sense to you.
And the neighborhood is so cute.
So I want to be. This has been a very very helpful, a very
like when we were driving out. I'm like, oh my god, this is
for the members of this
picturesque Americana place to trick or treat.
All of those tuned in, watching online, who are focused on this case.
And Kirsten's like, it absolutely is, because like it's just perfect. Houses with the trees and the cool streets and stuff. I would. I'm safe, Lucky.
Think about representing my constituents.
Especially in an area like that where there's a lot of cars and bike lanes and shit.
I think this is maybe what people
definitely wear your helmet.
And right now are wondering the most.
Portland is awesome, Bagheera. What are you talking about?
If everything you've said is accurate, and I believe that it is, in my own independent
with a bandana on my helmet,
that is 100% accurate, and there's a lot more that you haven't gotten to. How does this happen in our system? And if we're here to recognize,
Dr. Phil actually did a really good job of explaining how it happens in our system. The whole thing about confirmation bias and shit.
System, Doctor, I would ask you to answer that question. How does this happen? Because to me, this is not a shaken baby case. This is an ineffective assistance of counsel case.
Boom!
And my hypothesis is that had Mr.
I agree with slick hair
of counsel as he's constitutionally able to have.
Yep. And I don't understand how this has not been thrown out by the Supreme Court.
Kind of. Can you go?
That he didn't have proper representation.
Happened and what we can do to fix it.
Well, I talked about what we did at CSI, for example. And some people might say that in America, you're entitled to the best defense money can buy. And we did a lot of pro bono work. You know, we either charge our fee or we charge nothing. Because if you look at the population on death row, or you look at the population in prison, there's an overrepresentation of minorities. There's an overrepresentation of low socioeconomic.
Rich white guys don't get the death penalty, do they?
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
They don't get a lot of prison time.
Mary Jane.
And so the fact of the matter is, when you get a public defender, and
guys, breaking in the last couple of hours, apparently the U.S. was behind the leak of the Israeli plans.
And hardworking. And they got a stack of files on the corner of their desks that you can't even see over.
That's right.
And then I know
I take the U.S. to mean our government leaked it on purpose.
Checking the boxes.
But I also did not read the story.
There's a broad range, but I know a lot of dedicated.
I guess that could also apply to a rogue agent leaked it.
But they're just so overworked and spread so thin that it's just impossible.
We went over all the scenarios last night.
A fair representation to every client, but if you look at the number of exonerations, it's scary. You know, you're either for the death penalty or not, and if you are
I'm not.
for the death penalty, you have to be for doing everything in your power to ensure that those who face that ultimate sentence have had a fair trial and are guilty insofar as we can determine. I mean, you have to do everything. You can't kind of say sort of maybe we've got this right. And if you know 1107 says you can't do junk science, you can't have something that has evolved, and we're going to ignore that it's evolved, and just use what was there at the time. And keep them in jail, even though we now know better.
Sure.
If you execute people when you now know better, you need to abolish the death penalty. If that's the standard by which you're going to execute people, then you got a bad system.
So,
preach it, Dr. Phil.
Am I correct in assuming that Mr. Robertson could not afford at the time, could probably not afford CSI? Correct?
Nope.
Yeah.
Okay, he couldn't. I mean, there's other. It's not casting aspersions on CSI. I've worked with CSI before, and they're the best in the business. But the point is that Mr. Robertson simply could not afford the resources to provide himself not only effective assistance of counsel, but the full assistance of counsel for a capital murder case in which the prosecutor decided, I believe, grossly negligently so, to seek.
And the prosecutors admitted that.
Mr. Robertson was afforded the minimal, and that's probably even being generous and putting it nicely, the minimal assistance of counsel. And in many cases, his counsel actually worked against his interests. And so my opinion is that he had virtually no counsel. And I, like you, and I think many members of this committee and other legislators, we get asked, Doctor, you might know this, but we get asked.
This was a poor man,
from inmates on death row,
with an intellectual disability,
very frequently, to review.
Railroaded by our extremely flawed system.
In 12 years, I've received maybe over 100 of them, and I've only gotten involved in 3 death penalty cases: the case of Jeff Wood, the case of Melissa Lucio, and the case now of Robert Robertson. And without fail, in all 3 cases, it all comes back to ineffective assistance of counsel, because all of the facts that you've talked about here, all of these questions, all of the evidence.
You're right, DJ Dub.
Introduced at trial, the jury had no knowledge of it, members. None of that
Or there's a hell of a lot of public defenders that are just overworked and don't have the bandwidth.
It's built upon
to give a proper defense to people.
Basis that all this evidence is not part of. So our courts of appeals can't review the evidence. The record is so
Yes, Dr. Bill wants you to know that if you kill somebody, you can feel good about it.
So let me ask you this in closing. Do you believe that if Mr. Roberson is simply afforded a new trial, which is all I'm asking for, I believe that's all I don't want to speak for the members of the committee, but that's what I want, is just a new trial, where maybe we could get him effective assistance of counsel and have someone like CSI prepare him his defense and present all this evidence. Do you believe there's any way that he would be convicted of capital murder?
I do not. I do not.
I don't think there should be a new trial. He should have his sentence vacated by the Supreme Court because his constitutional rights were violated.
I don't think we have the wrong person. I don't think a crime was committed. I think this was a case where, tragically, a child was chronically and acutely ill. I think there was some problems with medication.
I think the hospital was probably negligent.
But I certainly don't think...
and blamed it on him to cover their asses.
But, what I've said is, when you have a circumstance...
But also, you know, never assume malice where ignorance will suffice. It could have been somebody at the very first trying to look out for this baby, thinking there's something odd, but then the system failed him from there on out.
At 5 a.m. and says he found this child on the floor and with labored breathing because she'd been sick for quite a while. He says he was able to get her feeling okay and put her back to bed. Should he have taken her at 5? I wasn't there, didn't see her, don't know. But he testifies that she got to feeling better, and this wasn't a new thing. He had only had her for a couple of months, but you saw the record, 46 times across 2 years. Put her back to bed. Then he finds her again, and now he races her to the hospital. I don't know that any crime took place, and I think if this full record and the testimony from Dr. Green and other pathologists, I think they would say no crime was committed here at all.
Doctor, thanks for being here.
If there was a crime, it was the hospital.
Chairman Darby.
I feel like there might have been a cover-up by the hospital.
Dr. Phil, thank you. Excuse me. Dr. Phil, thank you for coming.
It might have not even been the doctors or the nurses that were taking care of the patient.
First of all,
it might have been in upper management and shit. Sleazy fucking bastards.
On the face of the charge, if you've been charged with shaken baby syndrome, it would indicate to me, at least, that somebody shook that baby to death. And since you were the last person to be near that child, that you were therefore guilty by simply being charged with the name. What are your thoughts on that? Whether psychologically to a jury, just being charged with shaken baby syndrome would indicate in the jury's mind,
I love shake and bake.
Crime committed that you've now said perhaps was no crime. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're exactly right, Representative Darby. In psychology, we refer to something called iatrogenic label, where the label itself creates more problems than what it describes. And that is a very toxic label, obviously. And that's why I say I think sometimes burden of proof is a myth. When a jury hears something like that, they go, wow.
It's the sodium that makes it good, Luggy.
We have
That's why I don't bread anything with shake and bake other than I like pork chops with it.
At this guy,
good old fashioned shake and bake.
Terribly sensitive.
No, I do. I buy panko.
And if
I cook everything from scratch, come on.
Here for that, somebody needs to give
There's
me
nothing like a shake and bake pork chop.
Explanation, because they're looking over here. It's just like this setup right here. You got that big state seal up there and those flags beside it, and you got armed guards over here and all, and there's an awful lot of entrapments to this situation, trappings to this situation that make it seem awfully official. And then you got this guy over here, and the prosecutor knows the judge, and the judge knows the prosecutor, and they're calling each other by name, and the court clerk.
Rice-A-Roni is good.
And all this. Like,
I will in a pinch. They got the little Rice-A-Roni bags and shit.
Seems against.
I usually have a couple of things like that, or a couple of those little pasta bags. They're in the cabinet, just I get off stream. I don't want to fucking. I got a leftover pork chop, or I got leftover steak or chicken.
And there was a really
put one of those on the stove. Fucking 7 minutes. You got your fucking side.
It never got mentioned. It never got told, which is why I made the point that jurors make decisions on what they see and hear, not on what they don't see and hear. All of this that I talked about today never got into the court record. It never got reported. Nobody ever put all those pieces together until 18 years later, when the Innocence Project with pro bono lawyers and all come along and start piecing it together, and then they come to me, and I have my whole team at Merit TV, and everybody starts coming together, and now all of a sudden,
maybe the Innocence Project approached him,
and now
that's how he got involved with it.
Alternative explanation.
Well, I made a statement before you came into the chamber here, but the purpose of this body and committee, in my opinion, today, is to examine our current law that's on record that we created. There was a problem when convicted people could not get their.
I wouldn't use a chili I wouldn't use a crock pot for chili.
It was not an avenue.
I use my Dutch oven.
Legislature. We created it. And so in 2013,
so like you cook the meat in the Dutch oven, then you've got the grease and the
if you'll bear with me.
We the bottom
specific facts
make the base of your sauce.
Indicate relevant scientific evidence was currently available.
I'd stuff your mom, Ponder Monkey.
At the time of the conviction, because
wait a minute, what?
Not discernible through reasonable diligence at the time of the trial, and the scientific evidence would be admissible under the Texas
stovetop for the effort and everything. Like fuck, like
application.
Honestly, like it's really good, and it's like nothing to make. It's so easy.
So like ponderance of the evidence, the person would not have been.
You can't knock stovetop. Okay. It's like boil water, pour bag in. That's all it is.
We passed another law and said the courts would now consider whether the field of scientific knowledge, not junk science as we conveniently refer to it, we now refer to it as the field of scientific knowledge had changed. The court would also have to consider a new item, whether a testifying expert's scientific knowledge had changed. And so we created those standards. And what I'm trying to get to, did we go far enough or did we go too far? For example, it bothers me that the Court of Appeals seems to be taking a higher standard. They say that the evidence must reflect that the accused would be innocent. I don't think that's the standard by which we anticipated or created in 2013 and 2015. This almost, and several of the witnesses, I think they're going to testify again today, it's almost as though this habeas trial, it's kind of like a game of football. You're going to win or lose. I mean, instead of trying to determine, in your words, the goal is to seek justice, it doesn't appear that the functionality that we've created in the Court of Appeals is designed to seek justice, or is it simply designed to see who wins and loses? That's what's bothersome to me. Have we created language that would suggest the Court of Appeals is saying, no, that evidence has to show the accused is innocent? when I don't think when we voted for this bill in 2015, 2013, that was a level of examination that I don't think we created. So I guess ultimately I'll come to a question. The question.
Have you heard those two notes? Can you name that tune?
Our current law.
And also what video I'm getting ready to pop up after this.
Scientific knowledge has changed, and whether or not we had an expert testify, and I changed his testimony, saying that he believes he wasn't innocent. I mean, he wasn't guilty. Do you think our current, and I've given you the factors that compose.
Great job, chat. It was indeed proud to be an American. We are live in Greenville, North Carolina. Hold on. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. Try to give you a little atmosphere without doing the copyright thing. And I proudly stand up. Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. I'm sorry, that's the flat note. I didn't do it right. Here we go to the bridge. Proud to be an American, with the drums and everything. Yeah, he's really getting into it. Won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me, and I proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. I'm from Eastern Kentucky, so I thought we were actually defending a still. Literally. I grew up watching Andy Griffith. They were constantly talking about Otis and the still with the Darlings. I thought we were defending a still.
Thank you very much.
Live in Greenville, North Carolina. Am I 80? No, my mom just watched fucking shit from the 50s all the time.
Thank you very much. And a very special hello to Greenville right now, Greenville. And hello to North Carolina, special place for me. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm thrilled to be back in this incredible state with thousands of proud, hardworking American patriots. That's what you are. And I'd like to begin by asking a question. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
Yeah, probably.
I don't think so.
October of 2020.
Think about that, right? We have to get out and vote.
I am pretty sure my unemployment had been cut off at that time.
In this election, I will end in
for those of us who were contractors.
Bring back the American dream. Our country is being crippled.
His makeup is getting worse.
Kamala. How the hell did
I've heard people speculate that he doesn't have a professional makeup person anymore.
The guy had 14 million votes. I'm no fan of his, by the way. But he had 14 million votes. She had none. She was the first to lose. 22 people. She was the first out. She never made it to the great state of Iowa. Never made it. And, well, you know,
he does his own makeup. Oh, that'd be horrible. He definitely should not do that, but he probably does.
Before I get to my question, my pastor, Richie Butler, said to tell you hello, and that lets you know he's...
Her pastor said to tell you.
But I'm so glad I get to ask you the questions, and I didn't get called to your show for you to ask me the question.
Fair enough.
But
she'd workshop that one.
If you can, to take us back, and I promise you I will watch it. I have not watched the interview with Robert Roberson, but can you take us back to that time when you did have a chance to talk to him, since we won't get to hear from him today? in this chamber, and I just want to know, because you mentioned, and we heard this before, that he was very flat in his.
He is lucky.
We do know that he's on the spectrum, so I just wanted to know if you can share a little bit more about that time and moment and what those answers, because you said you asked him some pretty hard questions, and what his responses were like, and what, was there remorse there? How did
this would have been so much better if we'd actually heard from Roberson.
More about that.
Yes, I will. When I sat down with him, the Pulaski unit is one of the best run units in the United States, I have to say.
I don't know that we're going to hear from anything new from Dr. Phil. But also, on the same token, I don't think we're going to hear anything new from.
And all she had to do is go to him and say,
bitch face over
wake
here.
him up, wake him up, wake him up. We're going to sign an order, close the border. And it's closed.
Sign an order, close the border.
And we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in legally, right? They have to come in legally.
But apparently that's something Elon's thrown into him, like focus on, we want people to come in legally.
Our country again. You're not excited. It's hard to get excited with these people, with Biden. Let's get excited about Biden.
Come on, man.
But nobody was excited, and they went to him, terrible thing, and they said, we want you out. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. We want you out. Well, he said, if you put it that way, okay.
I wasn't expecting to do the Trump rally, but hey, I did have Trump's head on my Troll Patrol logo.
Of the United States. He didn't want to get out. In fact, the word is that he likes me more than he likes Kamala. I believe that's true. I believe that's true. What do you think, Whatley? How good is Whatley? What do you think? He's running the whole shebang. He ran your state. As you know, the Republican Party, we did so well, I said, put him in charge of everything this time. He'll stop the cheating. He's going to stop the cheating. How are you doing? Are they cheating, Michael? They're trying, but are they? They're not going to get away.
Michael, are they cheating?
He said, no. That's why I had him. They didn't get away with it in this day. They got away with it in plenty of places. This will be America's new golden age. It's going to happen. Every problem facing us can be solved, but now the fate of our nation is in your hands. North Carolina, you have to stand up and you have to tell Kamala Harris that you've had enough. You can't take it anymore. She's the worst vice president in history. It's the worst administration in the history of our country. They make Jimmy Carter look like he was a great president. He's a very happy man. Kamala, you're the
He was happy to vote against you.
I won't say it. Kamala.
Kelly, good afternoon.
Fired. Get the hell out of here. Get out.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Get out of here, Kamala. I've just come from Western North Carolina where I witnessed the terrible devastation.
Yeah, we didn't want you there.
Boy, that is some devastation. You look at nature. It's called nature. They have houses that are beautiful, big, strong, powerful houses, and they just wiped out. They're gone. The footings are gone. The foundations. Everything.
Holiday, I think we're about done with Dr. Phil. I think we've got all of him.
Lost a loved one or
that we can stand.
So with you, and we are.
This is Trump Live in Greenville, North Carolina.
Back, and we will be here on January 20th, and we will do a great job of rebuilding the state.
Ivermectin, we've got you covered.
And when I'm president, North Carolina will get the support you need.
North Crack-a-Lucky.
That is without question.
Dr. Trump McGraw.
Proper support from this administration. They spent their money on illegal migrants. They spent their money. They didn't have any money for North Carolina. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Or other places, by the way. Plenty of other places. The polls are open for early voting in North Carolina every day from...
Everybody behind him looks bored.
So get out there and vote. Get out there and vote. If you have to, you wait. November 5th is fine, too. We just have to make sure we vote and make sure it's counted. If you're,
at least he didn't say January 5th this time.
You do not have to return.
I mean, they look fucking bored.
Right to vote. You can request a ballot to your temporary housing location.
I would like to remind everybody, this is what, 10 minutes into his speech?
So here, houses are gone.
He just walked out.
I can't believe the devastation. They set a record for the first few days of voting. Now, these are people that lost their houses. In some cases, unfortunately, they lost family members.
That records to go out and vote against you.
A record in early voting. They've never voted for the number of days anywhere close to the voting that we've done, right? Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And I know Michael and the team, they worked very hard on making it convenient, but to think that that's a record that would be set. A lot of people thought it would be 20 or 30%. It's the highest number that you've ever had. That's a great compliment. And this is Trump territory, and that is Trump territory too. So that should be a good thing. So go to TrumpVote24.com/NC for more details. With your help, 15 days from now, can you imagine 15 days? Oh. Can you imagine?
You guys don't want to watch Trump. You guys want to watch the ultimate tag team. Former representative from Wyoming, Liz Cheney, campaigning with the current Vice President, Kamala Harris.
The American dream for previous generations was something that people could kind of count on, not so much anymore, in terms of home ownership. We have a housing shortage in America. We have a supply shortage. So part of my plan is, hey, let's be clear-eyed about this moment. Let's invest in the future. And as a devout public servant, I also know the limitations of government. I want to work.
He can't possibly win again, right?
Career, the skills, the breadth, the depth of.
Dick Cheney helped create this monster for sure. Torchy.
So part of my plan for housing is to.
He wasn't alone.
With building developers, with home builders, to create tax credits to increase the supply of.
But he certainly has an outsourced, and he might believe that. That might be why he's so adamant about Harris.
My approach that is about a new generation potentially of leadership, and certainly a different approach. Most of my career was not spent in Washington.
Is Vermin Supreme on Orbcast? I'll watch Vermin Supreme.
In that, most of my career. I
didn't know Vermin was running this time.
Making decisions that had a direct impact on people's lives. I learned at a very young age as a prosecutor that the things that I would do, the swipe of my pen, could result in someone having their liberty or not.
I miss when we could turn on
California, which is
a stream and get Vermin with his boot on his head.
I was acutely aware the words I spoke could move markets. I like getting things done.
What's she lying about, Bagheera?
And part of my approach, which is I think about a new generation of leadership, is let's cut through the red tape. Let's cut through the bureaucracy while still knowing the virtues of the work that we can do in the public sector, be it public education, public health, public safety.
I don't understand how somebody can be pro-Trump and then be like, yeah, Kamala Harris is lying.
Which is going to come from Alexandra Miller from Delaware County.
Who did she put in jail, Bagheera, with a swipe of a pen? The fuck are you talking about?
Alexandra.
Hello. Hello, Madam Vice President, Representative Cheney.
Hi there.
For taking my question today.
That's not lying, by the way.
Alex, I have a 7-year-old son and a wonderful 72-year-old mother who is suffering from dementia and requires full-time care. My son is in 2nd grade. My mother
I've seen Iron Maiden.
And I work full-time.
I love Iron Maiden.
The costs of child care and of elder care are staggering. But simultaneously, professionals that help care for both our children and our elders.
I mean, her job was Attorney General. Her job was literally to lock people up. So, okay, she did her fucking job, Bagheera. What's your point?
How do you propose to help bridge this gap, making both child and elder care more affordable for hardworking families, and also retaining and attracting quality talent?
I like that we're talking about child care, and the median age of the audience looks to be about 62.
So first of all, you're dealing with a lot. You're dealing with a lot. And I just wish you strength and support.
Who did she put in jail that was innocent? Like, name them, Bagheera.
We call the
And I don't think you should ever speak for the black community.
Which are
You should probably not do that.
parents and children who are right in the middle. They are taking care of their young children and taking care of their parents as they age. And it's a lot. And so I actually...
All right, bye, YouTube. We're going to say bye to you guys.
way, because I actually bring a personal experience to it as well.
Sorry, YouTube people, I didn't have